some background about the pension process and the pension management process, and then we can slide right into the MMOs and answer any questions you may have with regard to that aspect. This is kind of interesting because I do this a lot. I've been doing this for 35 years. Meetings don't usually start the way they started, so it took me aback a little bit, and I appreciate your ability to get us on first. I appreciate that more than anything because I'm diabetic, and then after I'm done, I can go have something to eat. If you look at reference 1, the only thing I want to show you there is the fact that over a period of time, a long period of time that we've been involved with the management of the pension plan, the assets have grown from $10,458,000, which you see under reference A, to $33,966,000. Now, the only reason why I point that out is because these are defined benefit pension plans, and it takes a long period of time and a total commitment to the management process and the contribution process, which you're going to talk about tonight, and that's the reason why I'm giving you this information. You're going to talk about the funding of them and the MMOs. If you look in Section B, though, it shows you the frustration that we all face in this industry. And when I say this industry, I mean managing defined benefit pension plans that are Commonwealth of Pennsylvania-sponsored plans under Act 205. Because if you look under B, you'll see that the cash flow out of the plans is really one of the things that, from a management standpoint, we have to make sure that we pay close attention to every year when we're setting up the process. So you can see that the 3 pension plans sponsored by the city of Hazleton last year in 2013 distributed $3,704,514 in benefits. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a defined benefit pension plan. It's supposed to pay retirement benefits. But there's a combination of benefits and post-retirement health care that make up that combination so that you can see what flows out of the plan on an annual basis. So now when you drop down to reference C, you'll see that the pension contributions, which is something I want you to see everybody participates in. Police put in 5%, the firemen put in 4%, the non-uniform puts in 5%, unless you were a PMRS employee and you were part of the old enhanced plan, and then you might still be putting in 4%. That plan changed in 2004. So the contributions for all the employees are in the first column, the state aids in the second column. That was the amount of money that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania distributed to the city this year. And the employer contribution is in the third column, $3,238,000, making the total $4,092,882. That's the money that will flow into the plan to help offset the funding costs and to keep the pension plans as solvent as possible. Now, amidst all this process that you've gone through, and we've been part of this process for probably now over 15 years, facing some real challenges along the way, as you can appreciate. The beginning of the century, 2000, 2001, and 2002, we had 3 consecutive negative years. We had to live through 2008, which was obviously the crash and the great decline in the markets. But there is some good news that's coming out of this if you look at reference D. Reference D shows that recently PERC, the Public Employees Retirement Commission, that supervises all these plans in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, recently just changed the funding level status for the city of Hazleton from a level 3, severely distressed, to a level 2, moderately distressed. Now, before everybody gets real excited and starts to jump up and down and say, hurrah, we're really making a great deal of progress, I think you need to know that the difference was 1 percentage point. And it's just the way the scoring works in the Commonwealth. Severely distressed breaks under 50% funded. So last 2012, you were 49% funded. 2014, you're 50% funded. So that 50% funding now has got you up to level 2, and that's what we're trying to work on now, is to get that level 2 funding status up to 55, 58, 60% ultimately, and keep it steady and keep it growing towards a minimally distressed process if we can pull that off. Last but not least is reference E. That's only there so that you can see that right now the process that's in place and has been in place for the city of Hazleton, that's being supervised by our firm and has been for quite a long time down here, is a all-encompassing, holistic approach in the fact that we do it all. We do the plan management, we complete all the administration and compliance under Act 205, we do operate the plans pursuant to Act 205 and function under an IPS statement. And last but not least, you have a really good process in place from a core satellite standpoint, and we're institutionally priced at just about every level. Now, all that said, let's talk about the second pass out that you just received. And that's a chart that we put together for you to take a look at comparing what you're going to vote on, I guess, later on this evening, is my understanding, as to whether or not you want to take advantage of one of the processes under Act 44 that the Commonwealth enacted back in 2009. And that's the fact that you can take your amortization payments, and so you appreciate what that means, is all the funding obligations and changes in benefit status and everything else that took place in the past years, 15, 20 years, et cetera, fall under this umbrella called amortization. Why? Because it's like a mortgage, and you get the opportunity to not have to write out a check and pay it immediately. You get to spread it out over a period of time under the actuarial process that the Commonwealth allows us to use. So with that said, if you look under column A, we've put together the minimum municipal funding obligation for the police, the fire, and the non-uniform going into 2015. Now, this is an MMO you're going to pass for next year because it has to be a line item and has to be calculated for the budgeting purposes, as you know, every year in September and October. So if you don't pass the 25% or don't utilize the 25% amortization, and state aid in 2015 turns out to be exactly what it was this year. And of course, we can't project or predict. We can only use what you got for this year. And you received $608,000 from the Commonwealth for this year. Your funding obligation next year will be $5,196,442. Now, if you say, wow, that's gone up from this year, it has. And it has gone up from the year before. And there's a number of reasons for that. I just want to briefly tell you why. In 2009, when the state enacted Act 44, they enacted a lot of different funding provisions that granted municipalities across the Commonwealth the opportunity to take advantage of various types of actuarial statuses. And one of the status was that you could use actuarial smoothing, which is grossing up plan assets by 120 or 130% in order to close the funding gap and reduce the heavy weight or burden on the municipality. This went on for the past 5 years, and you've been able to use this process for 5 years. However, it expired 1/1 of 2013. So what's happening, and what I've unfortunately been having to deliver to the over 110 municipalities that we manage, is the fact that the state has changed these provisions now, and going forward, from this point forward, we have to use the actual asset value in doing the calculations for funding these MMOs. So that means that, in simple terminology, and not to do actuarial science 101, if you have $1 million and you were able to gross it up 120%, you now had $1,200,000, correct? And you were allowed to offset your funding liability with that number, although it really wasn't a number that you actually had in your plan. So now the state is saying you have to use the numbers you actually have in the plan, which in this case, as of at the end of last year, was $33,966,000. So that's why you're seeing this increase in the MMO. So you still have a process left, and that process is the 25% reduction, which gives you the ability to say, we're only going to pay 75% of our funding obligation for the next 2 years. We're not going to pay the whole 100% of the amortization payment. Okay, this is a provision that's enabling you to do this. It's okay by the Commonwealth. The reason why is because under Act 205, you have the ability to use it for 6 years and you only used it for 4, so you have 2 more years left. Or you used it for 4 and you have 2 more years left. So if you do, you can see the big difference it would make. It reduces the funding obligation from $5,196,000 down to $4 million. It's a savings to the city of about $1.1 million for the next 2 years, this year and next year. Go right ahead, yes.
I have a question. Wouldn't it just increase our payment that we have to make next time, or what's the advantage of doing this now versus paying the...
Excellent question. It comes up all the time. We get the comment, mostly all we're doing is kicking the can down the road. Well, that's true to an extent, and obviously the state of Pennsylvania has been doing that down at PSERS and SERS for quite a long time. And the sad part is it ultimately either works its way out or it catches up with you. If you use this funding reduction right now, you're saving the city about $1 million this year and $1 million next year. If you don't use it, all you're doing is fully funding the pension plans without the utilization of this reduction. And by putting that additional $1 million in, it means it can go in with the current assumption under the actuarial rates of return, which are 8 and 7.5% for these plans. And it would mean that if the markets do well and the capital markets are beneficial and the city can afford it, that's the big question, Mr. President,
okay, thank you.
Is the fact that you would, in fact, be able to fully fund your plans. That's a valuable feature, fully funding them.
One question very quickly.
Sure.
When we talk about kicking the can down the road, would we, in 2 years from now, have to, will we have to pay 100%, which would be approximately 1.1 million more? Or will we have to catch up, at which point it will actually be more than that to make up for some of the discount that we've been using for these years? So are we looking for more money than what we would normally have expected to pay year by year, or will it just go back to what we would have here in column number 1 on the second page of the 5.8 million, let's say as an example?
Good question. My opinion is that you would probably not be paying more 2 years from now. You would probably be paying the same. However, you have to keep in mind that we're going to have a new year, and the reason why I say that is we have a new actuarial year coming up, 1/1 of 2015.
Right.
And we're going to be able to utilize everything that's taken place in the plan for the past 2 years, and hopefully, that will in fact have closed down the unfunded liability inside the plan. By how much? You could see that you moved 1% and changed from a level 2 to a level 3 to a level 2. I don't think you'll be looking at more. However, you have to keep in mind several things. One, increases in salaries impact funding all the time. That's one of the variables that go into the process. Demographics, retirees, things of that nature, they all go into the mix. So when that happens, there is obviously an automatic increase in funding cost. Sometimes they're offset by the fact that the actuarial or the investment strategy can add value to the overall performance. You can't invest your way out of debt. It never happens in these plans, and it never will. But you can squeeze down the unfunded status. So to answer your question,
yes,
I don't think you'd be higher. I really don't. And you're definitely not looking at, quote unquote, making up that 1 million because for all intent and purposes, you've just discounted it for 2 years.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Question. One quick question.
Sure.
Is there the percentage of pensions in Pennsylvania that are underfunded, is it a high percentage or?
It's a significant percentage, yes, that are underfunded.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we don't hear a lot about it, but it's one of the problems that the state faces as well in funding the SERS and the PSERS plans. at this stage right now.
If we continue to pay the 75%, could the city fall back under the 50% funded, which would put us back in the level 3, severely funded or severely distressed?
It could because, as you could see, the state, when they come out with this, and none of us that have been doing this for 30 years were in favor of the way they structured it, but that said, there's a 19% change from going from moderately distressed to minimally distressed, 19 percentage points. You go from 50 all the way up to 69. And when you get to 70, now you're minimally distressed. So could 3 percentage points change between now and your next filing, which your MMOs will be based on 1/1 of 15's vals for 2017 and 2018? Don't forget, right now what you're looking at here is funding 15 and 16. Nothing's going to change between now and 2017. These are the MMOs for the next 2 years, for 2015 and 2016. So by 2017, could things have changed? Yes. Could they decrease by 2 or 3% to break down underneath that 50% barrier again to go to severely distressed? It's possible. It's possible. But right now, what you're signing or you're passing in an MMO is to fund for 15 and 16. Because there will not be any Act 205 report that will change the funding status until the 1/1/15 val is done, and that's not filed till March 31st of 2016. So that'll take care of 17 and 18's projections.
Are you familiar with Detroit City? What happened with their pensions? Now, I read where some of their pensions got wiped right out, and how did that happen?
What city?
Detroit.
Detroit? I'm not that familiar.
Wouldn't the Pension Guarantee Association step in, or?
Another good question, but unfortunately the Pension Benefit Guarantee Association, PBGC, is only for corporate pension plans.
Doesn't apply to government?
Doesn't apply to government entities. Now in Pennsylvania, we do have a process down there. I don't know if it's ever been stretched or pushed to the limit, but there
Well, I read where Detroit, they pledged some of their pensions for loans, I guess, to keep the city going, and I guess they got wiped out. Is that what happened?
Yes, and if in fact you do use assets, which are not happening here, the assets here are individually custodialized, and in fact under an IPS statement that will not allow that to happen without changes in the IPS statement, the investment policy statement. So as long as I've been overseeing it for the past 15 years or so, we've never stepped out of the box from the standpoint of running it in accordance with the IPS statement. But it happens in big cities that try to manipulate their way out. Scranton right now is in a similar situation.
Yeah, they just had a ruling where I guess they denied them some funding for their pension, and
Correct.
it's going to be devastating.
Correct.
Well, they denied them the
Meter tax.
the commuter tax, too.
Yes.
That, I guess, was used to pay for some of their pension.
I think one of the things that's helpful here to the city is the fact that you put a percentage of your EIT aside under some legislation that occurred years ago, and that's able to help fund the pension plans in the future, so now and in the future. So I think that's helpful to the city. Any other questions? We good?
Yeah, I think we're okay.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, as a contributor to the pension plan and as a person who can I just ask a question or two?
Go ahead, yeah, sir, certainly, go ahead. This is a work session.
Can you clarify just, you're saying 49 or 50% of the actuarial value. Can you state the fact that we're the only municipality that actuarially accounts for our post-retirement health benefits, and that if we didn't, where we would be? Compared to apples to apples, because I believe, talking with Barbara, we are the only municipality, because we pay for post-retirement health benefits out of the pension plan, that's actuarially
very much, and I can speak to it. The post-healthcare benefits were infused into the funding process of the pension plans here 3 years ago or so, maybe more now. I lose track of time. Would they, in fact, impact the funding by as high as being up in the 60s? I'm not sure that's the case. As you could see, the MMO requires about $600,000 for the funding of the post-retirement health care benefits. But in fact, it does impact the funding status. And will continue to impact the funding status going forward. And I'm not really sure, and I wish I could address how many municipalities have done this, but I don't know, I don't think there's many.
It's us.
Yeah.
Just you.
We had Meyer Barber in here with our negotiation.
We're the only ones in
If
the whole
I-
state of Pennsylvania?
That actuarially accounts for our post-retirement health benefits.
Let me, if I can ask and interrupt, Dave, my apologies to you. So let me get this clear. We're not only paying out of the fund the normal pension plan that you would receive as a retirement pension, but we're also taking care of, out of this plan, per se, health care benefits for the employee and spouse as well, or just employee?
Yeah, if you remember back, probably in 2010, 11, 9, they were paying it out, they used to come out of the general fund.
General
And
fund.
then they started paying for it out of the pension fund, and then they ran into a big problem of, it was caught like in the audit, they had a big problem with that, and they were gonna have to pay back so many dollars, and then there was legislation passed that you could do it as long as you actuarially account for it.
Okay.
They're the only municipality that took advantage of that. And according to Randy Siegel, it's a good thing. Even though it looks horrible, like it's 49 or 50, we are at least actuarially accounting for that expense out of the fund.
Okay.
Versus you paying it out of the general fund,
Right.
and then you're just on a whim, versus at least you're accounting for it going forward. And I have, I'll give you a copy. As of 1/1 of 13, now his numbers were 44%, and pension only was 66. I'll give you a copy.
Okay, so it would be 66% if we were only paying the pension only. Is there any kind of breakdown that we would have, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Fatula, that, I'm sorry I'm leaving you
That's
out right
okay.
now, but that would give us a breakdown of how much money then is paid out within a pension itself versus the, I mean, not that I would want to change it, but so that it is clear to everybody how, what the funding for each particular source is.
Well, on the reference sheet that I gave you, that is under
That
item.
here?
Yeah.
It's under item B. It shows you
Okay,
exactly what goes.
Okay, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm looking
Not
at
in percentages now, but in dollar cost.
in actual dollar costs.
$3 million goes out to pay retiree benefits, and $614,000 goes out. So if
Okay.
you do that as a percentage, you can see that $600,000 of $3 million represents a little over 20%.
Okay, thank you very
The
much.
non-uniform is zero. Is that because we pay for it?
There are no post-health care benefits being paid out for non-uniform employees out of the pension fund.
Well, then where is it paid from?
If there are post-retirement health care benefits, I'm not sure whether or not you support them for the non-uniform employees.
Yeah, there's non-uniform.
Well, then they're being paid out of general revenue.
General fund.
Why?
Yeah, why would it be different than those? Is that because it's...
Well, years ago, the plan was under PMRS, the Pennsylvania Municipal Retirement System, and it converted over to third-class city code. Now, Maria knows a lot more about third-class city code than I do, but the bottom line is that you would have to physically, again, have the state approve the ability to put the post-retirement health care benefits into the pension plan and get the approval on the funding. And if you can and do and so choose, you can do that. I'm not aware of how much it costs the city. You'd have to check with the treasurer or whoever, with your city administrator, as to how much it's costing the city for your post-retirement health care for your non-uniform plan. I'm not aware of it. And it's never been part of the non-uniform plan. And years ago, if you could see, way back in 1996, the non-uniform plan was a startup plan. It didn't have a lot of money. It only had $350,000 in it. So probably over the years, it was very difficult to build the asset base inside that plan, and it took a long time to get it on its feet. Thank you.
Also, to be clear, the fire contribution is 5% also.
Yeah, it's 4 plus 1, I believe, right?
Is
Isn't there?
the
Yeah,
5%, is that an average in Pennsylvania, or how does that fit in with the rest of, the 5% contribution? How does that fit in,
the pr-
5% is the average.
is the average
Yeah.
in Pennsylvania?
This is the third class city code under lease plans that are in boroughs and townships. They're governed by Act 600. They have the leeway from going to a minimum of 5 to a maximum of 8. But under third class city code, yes, the average is 5%.
Can that be negotiated to anything we want, or?
Could negotiate it higher, but customarily, if you're asking 5% is what we see.
Okay.
That's fairly typical.
Typical, that's what I wanted to know. Any other questions? I guess that's it. Thank you for
You're
an
welcome.
excellent
Thanks for the
presentation.
opportunity
Yeah.
we don't get to interact with council very often, so we appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We'll move on to a regular meeting, Hazleton City Council, 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 Hazleton City Council,